Welcome everyone, and this topic is Simply Applique. This is the fourth in the series of webinars that I've had this year on creator level software. I do want to remind you that there are recorded webinars on the website. If you go to Learn and Create Recorded Webinars and Software, you will find the 3 previous webinars, one on lettering, one on editing, and one on auto digitizing. Today is about Simply Applique. As far as what we will cover, I'm going to talk a little bit about sources for designs. I'll talk about the tools in the creator level software, the different methods of embroidered applique. We'll look at object properties for applique and overview the applique tools in creator level. I also want to cover cutting options and then some fun things that you can do to add to your applique. We'll have a software lesson, and then I'll show you some slides about stitching out applique, and we'll also talk about DesignerPlus applique. As far as the sources and tools, you can use lots of different things for designs. There are pictures in the software that are appropriate for applique. We'll be using some of these. You can, of course, draw your own applique or scan in applique designs from patterns or books. Coloring books are a great source of simple designs to use for applique. And there are also websites that you can look into for color book images. When we look at the tools in the applique toolbox for creator level, there are 3 different tools for creating applique. These are the first 3 tools. There is an exercise for each one of these tools. Then there are 2 tools for editing. That's remove overlaps and break apart. And then the export cutting file tool is how you send designs either to be cut with the cut work tool or export as an SVG for a cutting machine. We have basically 2 types or methods of embroidered applique. One is called trim and place, and one is where you are going to be using a cutout pattern. The difference between these 2 methods would be the cutting line. The cutting line is needed for trim and place applique. It is not used for cutout pattern. So in the process of applique, you have the placement line that stitches, and that shows you where to place either the cutout pattern or the fabric. If you have a cutting line, then it stitches next. And if you are manually cutting with a pair of scissors, that cutting line will help give you a guide for cutting out the fabric that is placed over the placement line. Then there is a tack down line in both of these methods, and there are different types of tack downs. In some cases, or with satin stitch applique, you're going to have a zigzag tack down, but it can be a straight stitch tack down line as well. And then finally, the cover stitch covers up the raw edges of the applique. In this slide, this leaf shows you the trim and place applique, and the calyx shows you a cutout pattern that is placed over the placement line. When we look at object properties, the applique style, this is used for either pre-cut or trim and place. As you look down through the object properties box, cutting line is usually not checked. So the default is to use a pre-cut applique. But if you want to trim and place, you open object properties and just place a check mark by cutting line, and that will automatically add that extra line for you. For the tack down, you can alter the type of tack down, the spacing, and the width of the tack down. The cover stitch, as we'll see in a minute, there are 4 different types of cover stitches that you can do in version 9 software. You can alter the spacing of the stitch and the width of the stitch. Offsets are usually locked to the cover set, but in some cases you might want to uncheck offsets locked to cover, and that gives you more control over where that placement line is stitched. I've got an opened up density view of the applique stitch here. The blue is your satin stitch cover. The green line that you see is the cutting line, and that is directly over a pink line, which is the placement line. The purple that you see is the tack down. So in some cases, you may want to change the offset so the placement line and the cutting line are further in, so that when you trim with the trim in place applique method, that gives you a little bit more chance of the cover stitch covering up that raw edge. Normally, the placement line as well as the cutting line are in dead center of the applique cover stitch. So by changing the offset and moving it out further on the inside edge, that will let you not have to trim as close to the applique fabric in order for the raw edge to be covered. And you'll see this a little bit later when we look at the actual sample. So with the creator tools, the tools that are create applique, I first want to talk about the digitize applique tool. And this will create closed applique objects. You best use these for simple separate shapes, and up to 4 layers can be added with one digitized line. So you have a placement line, a cut line, a tack down, and a cover. In this example from Color Film, this is for pre-cut applique, so it is missing the cutting line. This shows the 4 different types of cover stitches that you can use with your applique. So when you use this basic applique tool, the applique designs are going to be very simple. There's no interior lines. You're just creating a border around the outside shape. The second applique tool is digitize applique with holes. And this tool you would use if you are creating an applique design that has a hole somewhere in the applique. So for this circle, you see that the flower is another example, or the letters that have holes in the center, you would use this tool. Then the third tool is converting embroidery to applique. And here you can take an embroidery design. It can be filled or it can be an outline stitch. And you create an applique by clicking on Convert Embroidery to Applique. It creates a placement line, a tack down, and a cover, and will add a cutting line if you go into Object Properties and change that. One of the editing tools is called Remove Overlaps. And this you can use in creator level software if you're placing an applique object over an embroidered object. And as you can see, it removes the embroidered object that would be underneath the applique. And you wouldn't want that bulk underneath the applique. As far as cutting options for pre-cut applique, you can print an applique pattern, and you go into your printing options and just make sure applique patterns is checked. And then you'll print out this pattern and use a pair of scissors to cut out your applique. You can also generate a cutwork file if you choose the EXP format in export cutting files. And you will see this in a minute when we work in the software. The advantage of using the cutwork tool is that you can cut multiple pieces. You can stack up layers of fabric and cut them out all in one hoop. So if you have several appliques of the same shape, it's really easy to cut out with the cutwork tool. Some of you may have a cutting machine. In this case, you can export an SVG file for cutting in a cutting software such as Silhouette, Scan and Cut, or Cricut. I happen to have the Silhouette Studio. I open the SVG file in my Silhouette software, and then I can send it to my cutting machine to cut out. I like to use the Silhouette when I only have a couple of pieces to cut out. As far as some fun things to add, and we will be adding some of these fun things, you can add a textured edge to your satin stitch in the creator level software. You can also add an outline edge to your applique. And you can use the knife tool to split an applique and then finish each edge with applique. We will be digitizing our applique shape in the software. Just some reminders about digitizing. You use left and right clicks around an object. Left clicks form points, right clicks form curve. You want to keep the number of clicks to a minimum because the object is going to be more smooth. You have one pass and the cover stitch, the placement line, the tack down, all those are added with one click around. You can use the backspace key to erase one click at a time. Escape will allow you to start over. Keep in mind that it takes 3 clicks to form the shape. So just because the second click doesn't conform around the object that you're digitizing, don't worry about it. Take that 3rd click. Always let the software close the shape rather than trying to click all the way around and come back and click on your starting point. Remember also, there's always reshape so that you can go in and edit any of those points that you added. You can add points, you can move points, you can delete points, and you can change points. Spacebar is what changes the points. So let's open up the software and look at the lesson. So this first lesson is going to be on a patch, and we're going to create this patch with an artwork that is in the software. So after you open up the software and go to Embroidery Canvas, click on Insert Artwork. Remember that the daisy is an icon that's used consistently in the software that shows that stands for artwork. We're going to choose shape 01 and click on Open, and it appears on your screen. Now, if I press the number 1 key, that shows me the shape in actual size, and I want to make this larger. So I'm going to go up here to the property, to the toolbar, and I'm going to change the 100 to 200 and press Enter, and that will increase the size of our patch. We'll use the Digitize Applique in our Applique toolbox to digitize around this design. It's always a good idea before you digitize, if you're using artwork, to right-click on it and lock the artwork. That way you won't accidentally move it. I can choose my Digitize Applique. I can pre-select the color, and I can digitize around this shape. At the points, I'm going to do a left click, and I'm going to zoom in and do a couple of right clicks in between the next left click. And again, 2 right clicks in between the left click. These are all right clicks down the right edge. I will do a left click here to change direction, and then right clicks up the other side. Now, when I get close to closing this shape, I'm going to press enter. And as you can see in color film, I have a placement line, a tack down, and a cover. After using the tool, press escape to deactivate the tool. And you can double click on the applique to open up object properties. We're going to be adding a cutting line for this. So I'm going to place a check mark by cutting line and then press apply. And if you'll notice over in color film, I have a second shield after my placement line, and this is the cutting line. We're going to make a few more changes in object properties. I'm going to change the cover stitch width to 3.5 millimeters. Now notice I'm in inches. I can type in 3.5 and type in mm after the width, and the software will convert that millimeter measurement into inches. I can click apply, and you can see that it's now converted into the inch measurement. I also want to change the offset because I'm going to be cutting with a pair of scissors, and you can't see the placement line, but it is right in the center of my satin cover. So I want to uncheck offsets lock to cover, and I'm going to change the cover offset and the tack offset to 0.01. That will bring it slightly to the inside. So when I don't get right up there to the edge of the cutting line, it will still cover the cover stitch will still cover that raw edge. I'm going to click OK, and you can barely see that cutting line is just slightly offset from the middle. Now I want to add my lettering, and the easiest way to add lettering is to press A on the keyboard, and that opens up your lettering object properties. Here I'm going to type in a word. You can type in whatever word you wish, and I'm going to choose the Medley font. Since I know I want to use Medley, I'm just going to begin typing ME, and notice that the software found it. I'll press enter to activate that, and in front of the word I get a preview of the way it's going to look, and I can also change my height of the letters, and as long as I stay within this range, I'm good to go. So I'm going to change the height to 0.7, and I can click apply and click on the screen to add my lettering. Now, because I might want to, I can go ahead and close this object properties too. Because I might want to make some changes, while this is selected, I'm going to change it to a contrast color. That just makes it easier to select in color film, even if I'm planning to stitch the lettering in the same color. It's sometimes a good idea to add a color change to make it easier to select. Now I want to select Control A, that selects everything. Pardon me. I'm going to go to the Arrange toolbar and select Align Centers vertically. Now, the artwork that is underneath is no longer lined up, but I'm done with the artwork. So I can first right-click and select Unlock, and then I can select that artwork and press Delete, and that will leave just my shield with the words. Now, because I'm making a patch, I want to add another line. And here we're going to need to do some resequencing too, because I want the lettering to stitch before the satin stitch. I'll select the applique and go back to my applique toolbox and select Break Apart. This will allow me to select the lettering and click on back one color so it will stitch before the satin outline. I also want to add another placement line for the back of the patch. So you can select either the placement line or the cutting line. I'm going to copy that and I'm going to paste it. I will change the color of that again to make it easier to move. And then I'm going to move that up in the sequence by clicking on back one color. So in color film, I have a placement line, I have a cutting line, I have the tack down, then I have the word, then I have a tack down for the backing that will go on the back side of the hoop, and then finally I have my cover. So let's add some detail to this, and we're going to add outlines and offsets around the border, the satin stitch border. So I'll select the border, go to the Edit toolbox, and click on Outlines and Offsets. I want to check Object Outlines. I'm going to change the color to be the same color as my patch. And I want a single stitch. I also want an offset outline because I want one on the inside edge as well. And I'm going to change the offset to minus 3.75 millimeters. Now, the 3.75 is the 3.5 millimeter width, and the offset that I had placed was 0.25. So that's how I came up with the 3.75. I'm going to select 1 for the offset count, and I also want to make this the same color as my patch. I'll uncheck Include Holes and click OK. And you can see that I now have a stitch around the outside as well as around the inside of my patch. And I'm ready to select File, Save As, and I will navigate to the location to save this file, and I'm going to call this Applique Patch. And I'll click on Save. Later, I'll show you the slides how this was actually stitched out. For the next design, I'm going to click on New Blank Design to get a clean screen. And for this, I'm going to use artwork as well. So click on Insert Artwork, and you will navigate to the location of the JPEG that you will download. So here I'm going to go to my Simply Applique folder and select B for Bernina and open that up. Again, I'm going to right click and I'm going to select Lock so I don't accidentally move the artwork as I digitize. This is going to be a little bit more complicated because we have more twists and turns and curves, but it's really a matter of just placing those stitches or those clicks along the artwork in the background. Now this time, because I have holes in this object, I'm going to select Digitize Applique with Holes. You can start anywhere on the outside. I will do left clicks to turn the corners and right clicks to form the curves. Here at the inset, I'm going to do a left click I'm not concerned about this. I can always reshape if my lines do not line up as well. So just go ahead and set your clicks, and we'll worry about reshape in a minute. I'll left click here, left click here. I'm going to put a right click here because it kind of dips down, a left click here. And then this is dipping in slightly as well. So I'll do some right clicks, come up to left click. These will be right clicks until I get into this point. I'll left click and then right clicks around. Again, let the software close the shape as you get close to where you started. I'll do one more click and then I'm going to press enter. Now, notice line was generated here because I chose digitize applique with holes. And now I need to go around the holes. So again, left click, right clicks here, a left click here. I'm going to do one right click and then press enter. And I have one more hole to do. So I'm going to left click here. Again, right clicks around the holes. A left click here. And I can let the software close with an enter. Now we have all our holes digitized as well as the outside. So by pressing enter again, I'm going to generate the applique. Now, as you can see, I could leave this as is, but I could also reshape. I'm not so concerned that my line lines up exactly with the artwork. As long as the shape looks correct, it's okay to not have it line up. But if you do want to reshape, press escape, and then you can select the applique cover and go into reshape. And here you can move a point by clicking on it and moving it. You can always undo if you don't like that move. You can add a point by either right or left clicking on the line, and you can change a point. Now, if you accidentally make a left click and you meant to make a right, you would just click on that point and press the space bar. Now, of course, that needed to be a left click, so I'm going to undo that. But the space bar will change either a left click into a right click or a right click into a left click. Again, to move a point, it's just a click and drag. If you've got a too severe of a point here, you can actually add another left click and you can flatten that out a bit by moving it. So sometimes points are too severe. So again, adding another left click and then kind of putting those close to one another can lessen the point a bit. And I'm going to undo that. So after you get it where you would like it, press escape. And let's say we were going to, let's first go ahead and do a file save as. And I'm going to call this B is for Bernina. And click on save. Now, we're going to make a cut file with the cut work tool. So I'm going to select the applique and click on export cut file. I only have one design to export, and it is the applique shape. It right now is going to export an SVG, but I want it to be the cut work. So I'm going to select EXP from the drop-down choices. This is automatically exported to your cutting files folder. So all I have to do is click on export. To find that file, I'm going to click on Open Design, and I'll go to my Libraries and Embroidery folder and my cutting files. And here is the B is for Bernina. I'll click on open, and that will give me a non-native design message. All you have to do is click OK. And all of the cuts are indicated over here in color film. Now, to make this more efficient, I want to combine all the cut 1s, all the cut 2s, all the cut 3s, etc. So I'm going to click on the cut 1s, and I'll drag and drop all the cut 1s up in between cut 1 and cut 2. I'll repeat that step for cut 2 and then also cut 3. And that will give me a more efficient cutting file. So all the cut 1s will cut. If you don't have a cut work tool, it's a tiny, tiny accessory that goes where your needle is in the machine. Most current machines, Bernina machines, are compatible with the cut work tool, and you place that cut work tool in the machine, and you'll send this file to the machine, and it will cut. This machine will give you indications of when to turn the cut work tool to the next position. There's a dial that shows you all the different cuts. So this is ready to do file save as, and I am going to call this B is for Bernina Applique, and I'm going to put the word cut work behind the applique file and click on save. I'll get a new blank design, and I'm going to click this time on Insert Embroidery because we're going to use the Convert to Applique tool in this case. Navigate to your 01 basic shape folder, and we're going to use shape 04. I'll click on open, and you can see I've got 2 circles. I'm going to increase the size of this. It's always a good idea if you want a larger file to increase before converting it to applique. I'll enter 125 in the width and press enter, and I have a larger design now. I'm going to right click and ungroup because I'm going to add applique to both of these edges. I'll select the inside circle, and I'm going to change that to yellow, and the outside circle I'm going to change to white. I'll select Control A and click on Convert to Applique, and just with those few steps, I now have an applique design. You'll notice that there's a placement line, a tack down, and a cover for each of these. But before we send this design to the machine, let's do some editing. I'm going to select the white satin stitch, and down in your effects toolbar, I'm going to right click on the textured edge icon. For this design, I'm going to place a check mark by textured edge and indicate both sides. And if I click on apply, it's going to give me a preview of what that design is going to look like. I can adjust my span as well as my texture. And again, click on apply. So you can get this the way you would like it to look. Just experiment and then continue to click on apply. I'll select the center circle, and I'm going to select side or place a check mark by textured edge first. You always have to place a check mark by textured edge. And this time I'm going to do side 2 and click on apply. So this time I just put the texture on one side. Again, you can adjust this as you want and then go ahead and click OK. Now, if I look at my design, over in color film, the yellow center is stitching first, and I really need it to stitch after the white. So I'm going to click on, with it selected, I'm going to click on Move to End. And now we're going to add fabric. It is okay to send this to the machine without fabric, but if you want a preview of the way the fabric will look, that is perfectly doable. So I'm first of all going to double click on the yellow center. I'll click on Applique Fabric. And I know that there are some good plain colors in the apple butter line under Banner Text. I'm going to select a yellow. I'm going to click OK, and I'm going to apply that color. Then I'm going to select my white. Again, click on Applique Fabric, select the color, click OK, and click on Apply. Now, I can close that. If you don't see fabric, you can click on the Show Applique Fabric. It is deactivated by default, so you must have this activated. Remember, any icons in the software that are blue are activated icons. So if you do miss fabric after adding it, be sure that that icon is highlighted in blue. Now, if I wanted to print a pattern piece for this, I could print by going to Print Preview, but I want to address the tack down that is showing. So we might want to change, when you do a textured edge, you may want to change your tack down. So I'm going to double click on the applique again, and I can go to the tack down, and I can change the width of the tack down, and I can decrease the width and click on Apply, and you can see how it disappears. It's still there, it's just hidden by the cover stitch. So sometimes when you add a textured edge, you are going to have to go back in and adjust the tack down. Now, if we wanted to print this to cut out a pattern, you can go to the Print Preview. Pardon me. Go to Options and make sure you have Applique Patterns checked. When I go OK and go to the next page, I have two applique patterns that will print. I can print this out and use those to either trace on the double-sided adhesive or print out or use to cut out the pattern directly. I'll close that, and we haven't talked about cutting machines yet, so let's talk about how you send an SVG. I'm going to click on Export Cutting File again, and this time I want to make sure that I have automatically distributed, highlighted, or ticked under Layout. This will make it so that the yolk is separated from the egg. So I want to make sure that that's checked. And then for the type, I want to choose an SVG file. Now, I haven't yet named the design. This design is called Sunny Side Up. So I can name the design here. And when I click on Export, those two circles are sent as SVG files to use in my cutting machine. I'll do a file Save As, and I'm going to call this Sunny Side Up. And click on Save. So I'm going to return to my PowerPoint, and let's talk about how these were stitched out. I use the small clamp hoop, and for those of you who haven't been around the Bernina world lately, this is a brand new hoop that is perfect for small applique designs. It is a cousin to the medium clamp hoop that was introduced last year. It's smaller, so it can work on your 5 series machines, your 7 series machines, as well as the 8 series machine. This is a pre-cut applique design. I'm going to show you the sunny side up first. So I backed my fabric with lightweight tearaway and then put the clamps around the hoop. The placement line was stitched. I had pre-cut the applique shape and placed that on top of my background fabric. The tack down was stitched and then the cover. Next, the steps were repeated for the center. The placement line was stitched, then a tack down, and then the cover. For the B4 embroidery, I also used a cut out design with a pair of scissors in this case, and I stitched the placement line, the B for Bernina, and then stitched the applique design. The patch took a few more steps. In this case, I also used the small clamp hoop. I used aqua mesh stabilizer in the hoop, and I stitched the placement line directly on the stabilizer. Next, I laid down the fabric, and this was a twill fabric, and the cutting line was stitched, and then I took a pair of scissors and trimmed close to the patch. The lettering was done next with the tack down around the design. I then removed the hoop from the machine, and I taped the same twill fabric to the back of the stabilizer using OESD tearaway tape. And the cutting line around the patch was stitched. Again, I removed the hoop and trimmed the back of the patch. Place the hoop back on the machine and finish your stitching. You can see the cover stitch was stitched and the two lines of single stitching were stitched. And then I trimmed around the excess stabilizer and removed the edges that remained of the stabilizer with warm water around the edge. Now, before I open up for questions, I want to talk to you a little bit about what DesignerPlus Applique has to offer. Some of you may have Creator. Please be aware that as you work in Creator and begin to love the software even more, there is an update that can be purchased for DesignerPlus Applique. I have circled the extra tools that are available in DesignerPlus. We have a tool called Advanced Applique. We have something called Remove Applique Overlaps, and then we have Combine Applique. So with the cutwork applique in V9, you can pre-select your properties in the Docker, and you can add a cutwork border very quickly, and it will automatically add a border around your design. What's nice about this, it adds a running before stitch before the cuts, and you can see the cuts are automatically combined when you use the cutwork Docker. The cutwork Docker is not available in Creator, so this is one added feature that you would get. Remove applique overlaps is another added feature, and you can use this when two or more applique objects overlap. So in this case, the cover stitch is removed from the objects underneath the applique on top. So you have that capability of, instead of just single appliques, creating overlapped appliques. In addition, there is a tool called Combine Applique, and when you have multiple objects in your design, you can combine the appliques so that all the placement lines and all the tack down lines are stitched at the same time. This is a faster process in stitching out the applique. Then another tool that you'll find in DesignerPlus Applique is Advanced Applique. You can use Advanced Applique to do just a very simple design like you see in the square on the slide. You can also use it for more complicated designs. And it is applied to an existing design. It's not a digitizing tool. So with advanced applique, you can do more complicated designs. Your designs can contain open objects instead of just closed objects. With the creator applique tools, you can only create closed objects, which would be like this petal in the center of this flower. All these other petals were created with the open tool because they don't come around and close on themselves. You're also not limited to satin and blanket and zigzag and single line applique. You can do decorative stitch applique. In addition, you have artwork canvas with DesignerPlus applique, so you can draw quick shapes that are great for using with the advanced applique tool. You have all these shapes that are shown on the slide that are quick and easy to convert into applique. With advanced applique, your objects can be split, so you can do an open object down the center and then a closed object. So it allows you to add different fabrics to each side of the leaf, for example. This bunny was created with just open tool, and the open lines within the bunny create dimension for your applique design. I mentioned you can add decorative stitches to your appliques, so that opens up all the different pattern stitches that are available in DesignerPlus applique that can be placed either around a design to finish off the applique or underneath a design that has a satin cover. You also have a tool called Merge Fabrics, and this lets you create one single shape, but yet it has the dimensional open objects around the applique shape as well. So Emily, I am ready for questions.
Okay, hi everybody, welcome back. Debbie, do you want your camera on?
Yes, you can turn it on. Okay. Thank you.
1 second, everybody. Thank you guys for watching. As just a reminder, there are 2 handouts in the toolbar section, and so you can go ahead and download those now if you haven't already. There's step-by-step instructions of what Debbie went over today and the letter B that Debbie did the applique around. So we have a few questions from our attendees today. Let's get to the first one. Pull this up here so I can read it better. Okay. This one's from Janet. She says, if you have a digitized applique file that was saved in the software as an EXP file, can it be converted to an art file to create an SVG file for cutting?
It would have to be redigitized, but it can be brought into the software. You can lock that design in the background, and then you just use the tools in the software to redigitize the applique.
Okay. She said she had purchased, the instructor who digitized a quilt pattern did not save the applique in art files. So I think that's where she was trying to get everything figured out. Okay. The next question.
Emily, before you go to the next question, one other way to do this would be to bring in the file and convert to artwork, which would bring it, but you have to have DesignerPlus to do this. That would convert that file to artwork, which could then be converted back into embroidery and then converted to applique. That would give her a pure art file as well.
Awesome, those are great instructions. So Linda has a question. Can you import an SVG file to make it into an applique file?
Yes, that again would require artwork canvas.
Okay.
Because if I click on my insert artwork, you can see SVG is not an importable type of format in our embroidery side. So what would be necessary then would be to open Artwork Canvas, import the SVG, and then switch over to Embroidery Canvas.
Okay, awesome. It looks like we have another question from Letitia. She says, is there a webinar on how to merge applique? Have we done one of those so far?
I have, I'm not sure what year. I don't know if it's still posted.
We'll look for that for you, Letitia.
If we have time, I can show, if that's okay. Do we have more questions, or?
We do have a few more questions, so let's see how many we can get through. Okay, let me see. The next question says, I have DesignerPlus. The advanced applique option is grayed out. Does this mean I cannot use it?
No, this fools a lot of people. Advanced applique is not a digitizing tool. It has to be applied to an object. Now, I would suggest for those who, and actually the merge fabric is part of our mastery workbook. So if you will go to the website, BERNINA.com, and on the home page, there is a link to the mastery workbooks. The mastery workbook for DesignerPlus level has a lesson on applique that teaches you how to use advanced applique as well as how to merge fabrics. So if you don't have that mastery book, if you have DesignerPlus, download both the Creator as well as DesignerPlus, because those both contain exercises that will outline how to use those tools.
Wonderful, good to know. The next question comes from Jenny. How can I applique a line work artwork from a quilt pattern to be the exact size as the pattern? There are multiple images.
Okay, so it's, you could, I'm assuming that you don't have access to a JPEG for the quilt pattern that you're trying to import. In that case, you have to scan the pattern or scan the design at 100% size and save it on your computer as a JPEG. And then you would insert the artwork the same way I inserted the artwork that was built into the software. And then as you digitize that, as long as you scanned and saved at 100% size, that applique should fit that pattern.
Awesome. Okay. The next question comes from, let me see, Eileen. Is it possible? Oh, wait, no, sorry. Can you clarify how to send a cut work file to your sewing machine?
Sure. Let me open up the software here. And here is the cut work. Now, one thing that I might add, when you are bringing in this file, it is no longer in the center of the hoop. So the first thing I'm going to do is right click on this show hoop icon, and I'm going to uncheck at start needle position. And when I click OK, it goes back into the center. Now, this is a good point, a good time to bring up this point. We have, with the update that happened with version 9, we have a new method of sending files to the machine. So before I go through that, I want to point out, I'm going to go back to my home. And when I go back to home, I can go to tutorials and featured tutorials. And if I scroll down, I have added 5 new videos. This first one, 121, is called Changes in the Device Selection. So that could be what you're having trouble with. The other 4 are for those who have 790 Pros. But when we, I'll go back over to Embroidery Canvas. When we updated the software, the method remains the same, but the device looks a little bit different, the device selection. So when I click on my right to card machine, the first thing I have to do is click on settings, and I can add whatever machine I'm sending that design to. And then it's just a matter of clicking on the EXP USB stick, and that design is then sent to my EXP or my USB folder, and I can take the USB stick and take that to the machine. If you have your Wi-Fi device set up, you can just simply click on that, and the cut work will be sent wirelessly to your Wi-Fi device that is connected to your machine.
Okay, hopefully that will help. We have one more question, and then maybe we might have a few minutes to do a merge applique. So this comes from Sharon, and I did have to ask her about this because I had never heard about it before. Is it possible to create, and I might say it wrong, a Murrow type stitch as the cover stitch? And it's a special edge around patches, and she spelled it MERROW.
Okay, that is what I did in that patch exercise. That's what we can do as far as a Murrow stitch. Okay. But instead of a single stitch, I would recommend that you use triple stitch. So when I go back into my software, what I would do is, let me delete these 2 stitches here. I could go to my edit and do outlines and offsets. And what I would recommend, instead of a single stitch, you change it to a triple stitch. And my settings are all the same. So when I click OK, it's going to give that finish only with a triple stitch. So if you, that's what we can do for a Murrow stitch.
Okay, well, hopefully that will get Sharon excited about trying that in software. So we don't have any more questions. We do have a couple minutes if you're up for it, if you would like to go over merge applique.
My voice is hanging in there, so I'll be up for it. So I'm just going to do a simple design with 2 pieces. This will, and you know what? I can't do this in Creator, so I'm going to have to open up my DesignerPlus software in order to show you advanced applique. It may take a few minutes to open, but.
So while we're waiting, everybody, don't forget we do have the handout and the JPEG image for applique practice. If you missed downloading them or you can't find them, they'll be available on BERNINA.com when we post the recording of the webinar. So you can go back through and follow all of Debbi's amazing instructions on how to do these appliques.
Thank you, Emily. Okay, so again, my advanced applique tool is not going to be highlighted when I go into my applique toolbox. You'll see it's not highlighted, and that's again because it is not a digitizing tool. It's something you apply to something you've created. So I'm just going to go to my digitize toolbox. I'm going to select a satin outline and the open object, and I'm going to click around to make an outline. Then I'm going to select my closed object, again selecting a satin stitch, and this time I'm going to create an object that overlaps with the first object. Now I can select both of those. And when I go back to applique this time, you'll see advanced applique is now highlighted. So you create your applique with the digitizing tools, and then you apply advanced applique. Now, I still don't have a placement line, a tack down, or a cover, and I won't until I add fabric. So I'm going to select my fabric, and I'm going to put it on both pieces. Now, I can cut out each one of these pieces, but I could also cut out one big piece of fabric and it would still look as two pieces in the end. And I can do this by merging the fabrics. So after applying the fabric, you can see I now have a placement line, a tack down, and a cover. And Advanced Applique actually combines the placement lines and the tack downs and the cover. To merge, I'll click on the word back, and then I click on merge patches together, and I click on each piece. And now you can see that the white outline that is around these merged patches is actually the one big piece that I'm going to cut out to create this applique. So when I go into print preview now, my applique pattern is one big piece, but when it actually stitches out, it's going to stitch out as if it were two pieces.
Very cool. Awesome. We do have one more question if you have time, Debbi.
Okay.
Question comes from Vicky. How would you do a double applique letter like on a Letterman jacket?
Are they overlapped or are they separate?
I'm not sure. I haven't seen a Letterman jacket in quite a few years. And I know they're all different.
And she may be talking about a double row of satin stitches.
Possibly.
Okay, that could be done with the Advanced Applique. Again, it would not be done in creator level. You have to have Advanced Applique to do that.
Okay. Well, that is our last question for today. So I just want to say thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar today. And make sure to check out the recording on YouTube and Bernina.com here in a few days. And happy creating in the software. Thank you, Debbi.
Thank you, Emily. And thank you, everyone. Have a great day.